Famous Guitars, episode number 46. Will you take a budget guitar made out of fiberglass that's usually sold in a big box department store, create some of the most iconic rock tunes? You might think I'm talking about this guitar right here. And of course, I'm talking about Jack White's red 1964 Airline Rezoglass JB Hudo guitar. This strange plastic-bodied instrument became one of the most recognizable guitars in modern rock history. If you've ever watched early performances by the White Stripes, chances are you've seen it. Bright red, angular, and sounding like a chainsaw tearing through a garage rock riff. Today we're going to dive into the story behind that guitar, how Jack White discovered it, what makes it so unusual, what recordings it helped shape, and where it is today. The guitar itself dates back to 1964, when it was manufactured by the Chicago company Valco and sold through Montgomery Ward department store, cataloged under the Airline brand. Like most guitars of the time, the Airline was built using molded fiberglass material called Rezoglass, essentially two hollow plastic shells surrounding a wooden center block. The guitar had two large Valco single coil pickups, a steel reinforced neck with no truss rod, a bolt-on design with a floating bridge, and bright red finish with a white pickguard. When it originally sold in the mid-1960s, the guitar cost only $99 and was considered a cheap beginner instrument. Ironically, the low-budget origin would later become a big part of its charm. The story of how Jack White found the guitar fits perfectly with his love for quirky, imperfect instruments. In the late 1960s, while living in Detroit and forming what would become known as the White Stripes, White discovered the red Airline guitar in a pawn shop and bought it for only $200. At the time, it wasn't considered collectible or desirable. In fact, many guitarists avoided them because the fiberglass body and non-adjustable neck made them difficult to set up. But Jack White loved exactly that. He's often said he prefers instruments that fight back a little, forcing him to play creatively. The Airline's rough edges, buzzing tone, and aggressive pickups helped define the raw sound he wanted. White generally kept the guitar close to its original design, but like most touring instruments, it went through some maintenance and small changes over the years. Typical changes reported for his Airline included replacement or maintenance of frets due to heavy touring use, setup adjustments to deal with the non-adjustable reinforced neck, occasional electronics maintenance on the Valco pickups and controls. Unlike many professional guitars, it never became a heavily modified instrument. That simplicity was part of the point. Jack White often described it as basically a hollow piece of plastic, and yet, through fuzz pedals and loud tube amps, it produced one of the most recognizable guitar tones of the 2000s. During the early career of the White Stripes, the red Airline became Jack White's primary guitar, especially on stage and in the studio. It was heavily used across the band's early recordings, including the White Stripes, White Blood Cells, and Elephant. On the album Elephant, the Airline was one of the main recording guitars and contributed heavily to the raw garage rock sound that defined the record. Songs and performances associated with the Airline include Dead Leaves and the Dirty Ground, Icky Thump, Ball and Biscuit. While the famous riff of Seven Nation Army was actually recorded on a different guitar, the Airline was still one of the main stage instruments during that era. For nearly a decade, the red Airline was one of the three guitars Jack White relied on throughout the White Stripes' career. What makes this guitar especially interesting is how much its reputation changed. When Jack White first bought it, it was basically a forgotten budget guitar. After the rise of the White Stripes, vintage Airline guitars suddenly became highly collectible. Today, original Rezoglass models can sell for thousands of dollars, largely because of White's influence. His use of the guitar even led to modern reproductions, with companies reissuing Airline-style instruments inspired by the original design. So where is it today? The original red 1964 Airline JB Hudo remains part of Jack White's personal guitar collection. Although he now performs with a wider range of instruments in his solo career, the guitar is still regarded as his most iconic instrument, and occasionally appears in exhibits, studio use, or archival displays related to his work. It's widely considered one of the defining guitars of garage rock revival in the early 2000s. So from cheap mail-order guitar made of fiberglass to one of the most recognizable instruments in modern rock history, the red 1964 Airline Rezoglass became legendary because it landed in the hands of someone who embraced its flaws. And there you are, there's your Famous Guitars, episode number 46, Jack White's red 1964 Airline Rezoglass guitar. And like, share, and follow for more Famous Guitars, and don't forget to check out my album, In Your Face, on ElasticStage.com and all these streaming platforms.